Hi everyone, welcome back to Comic Book Issues. It's time for another one of our vlog reviews. This time I just saw Justice League. And I liked it. Nobody's more shocked than I am at that statement. I think we've established that I hated Man of Steel and I was fairly ambivalent towards Batman v Superman. But this one is it's an action film, and they don't try to be anything but an action film, which is where the other two films failed, as they try to be kind of character pieces, and Zack Snyder is he's not about character, he's about action and scenes, and he's a very visual director, and on that sense, Justice League works. It's a very visual movie. I think you just need to go in, check your brain at the door, and you'll just enjoy yourself. It's a lot like Pacific Rim in that sense, because I said Pacific Rim was a very good popcorn film. Just go in, watch it, and enjoy. Don't worry about any deeper meaning. Just take what's in front of you, and it works. That said, it's a good film. It's not great. Let's break down the actors, starting with Ben Affleck back as Batman. And I'll say this, the biggest problem with this movie are its two male leads, and I'll get to Henry Cavill a little later, but Ben Affleck as Batman, I just don't buy him as Bruce Wayne or Batman. I guess once you put all that armor he wears is so thick and heavy. I mean, he looks like I know they're going for the older Batman, so maybe the armor is going for the Dark Knight Returns look. But he just looks so bulky in that stuff, it's hard to believe he can fight crime. And I know he's supposed to be the older, wiser Bruce Wayne acting as a mentor to everyone, but, you know, a few sprigs of gray in the temples don't really make me buy that he's this old, seasoned, grizzled veteran. And he always seems so ambivalent about what's happening around him. He never has the anger or the deep regret that I feel like Batman needs to be a successful character. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, she was fine, but she's really riding a huge wave of goodwill after the Wonder Woman movie. Visually, again, a very visual movie, that scene where she saves all the hostages in the opening with kind of the super speed bracelets and bullets scene, that was really cool. They make a good point in the scene where Batman confronts her over Steve Trevor's death and says she's been hiding from the world. She's never really been the force of change she could have been. And I think that's an important acknowledgement so we can move forward with the character. Although I do hear that the next Wonder Woman is also going to be set in the past, so I would like to see a present-day Wonder Woman story going forward. The biggest letdown in the movie is Ezra Miller as the Flash. He just comes off as way too uncomfortable. He's trying too hard to be funny and to fit in. He says to Batman, "I need friends." Well, I'm not surprised. I'd imagine you drive a lot of people away with your off-putting behavior. Here's the thing. I think this would have worked better if he had just gotten his powers, but we don't get an origin story for him in this movie. We've already seen him as the Flash in BVS and in Suicide Squad, so in our minds, he's established as a Flash, even if it's still fairly early in his career. And he's trying very hard to be the witty, funny character, but we've had, by this point, 4 years of Grant Gustin as the Flash on TV, and he's a Flash we're all very comfortable with. I don't blame them for trying to make a different Flash than the one that's on the CW, but the comparison is going to be there whether you want it to or not, and I don't feel like Ezra Miller measures up to what Grant Gustin has brought to the role. The best comparison I can make is that they're writing him like Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory, and no, not for a 2-hour sitting. Cyborg, played by Ray Fisher, is a big improvement over what they did with Flash. They had a couple of scenes where they show he's angry at his father, which goes back to his original appearance in the New Teen Titans, and they show he doesn't want to get involved. He has one scene with his dad and one scene with Wonder Woman who says, "Leave me alone, I don't want to get involved." Then he immediately gets involved. Also, he suffers from Green Lantern costume, if you know what I mean. He's got the whole CGI body, and I'll give Ray credit. He does a lot of decent acting with essentially half a face. Everything else on him is CGI the entire movie. So for what little of him is actually showing, he gets a lot of character through it. I do like that they showed him kind of having a hard time fighting against the programming. He was good. I felt he needed more bitterness and anger. He kind of gets into a team spirit and BFF with Flash pretty quickly. But again, not a good character piece film, but a good action film, so they just kind of move things along and let us take a lot for granted, which works and it doesn't, you know. This is why it's a good film, not a great film. Aquaman by Jason Momoa is probably the breakout star of this film. He's not how I've ever imagined Aquaman, either in look, orange shirt, blonde hair, or in attitude. He's pretty surly and crude. But he has the same effect on the team as Drax does in Guardians of the Galaxy. He has no filter, and that honesty kind of creates a lot of good humor moments. The problem here, again, they tried to make The Flash funny, and they tried to make Aquaman funny, and it works with Aquaman. It doesn't work with Flash. And it's the same complaint I had about Thor Ragnarok. Too many funny characters. Just leave the humorous moments to Momoa, because he could pull them off. Henry Cavill's return as Superman. Well, I am glad that they didn't save this for the very end. They did it about halfway through, so we had time to kind of accept it, decompress. It's the middle point of the film. They fight Steppenwolf, they realize they need Superman, they bring him back, then they have the final battle, and he returns at the end of that to save the day. Again, I don't know if I've ever said this, but my problem with Henry Cavill as Superman is he's just so bland. He looks the part, he can do generic nice guy, but beyond that, it's like, what's it like being dead? Weird. Oh, thanks. Again, the character moments here fail, and the biggest problem with Justice League is that Batman and Superman, and to a lesser extent Wonder Woman, the trinity of DC heroes, they're very boring. So that's it with Superman. It was just the usual stuff from him. Nothing exciting, nothing that made me think. Of course, last time they tried to make me think with Superman, he killed Zod, and that was a huge mistake. There's got to be a way to make Superman exciting while keeping him in character. They should read the current Superman series that Tomasi is writing. It's really good. The supporting cast, Alfred, Hippolyta, Martha, they were all fine. I have really nothing to say about them. Amy Adams, I know every time we do one of these films, I say how Amy Adams is the best thing in them. And yeah, I know, I get bored hearing me repeat myself as well, but she is really good. When she emotes in these films, I believe it. I wish more of the actors watched her performance and realized that's what you do. The scene with her and Martha where they both kind of talk about they haven't moved on from Clark's death, and the scene in the farmhouse where she's so upset with herself because he's back and she's like, I didn't deal with you being gone well. I wasn't brave. I wasn't the woman you fell in love with. Yes! Acting! Amy's good. Amy has been consistently good in these three films. Steppenwolf by Kieran Hines is another character who suffers from the CGI body. In fact, he's all CGI. He's mocapped, the face is CGI, and the parademons are all CGI. It's like, you know, let Peter Jackson be Peter Jackson. At some point, practical works better than CGI. So I wish he'd had more of a physical presence than a computer body. That said, as a comic book fan, I kept waiting for the Darkseid reference, and it never came. 3 mother boxes, parademons, Steppenwolf. No mention of Darkseid. Same thing happened in BVS. They removed the Darkseid references. It's like, he's the big bad, but they need to set him up like they have set up Thanos in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Some other thoughts about the film. I really like the flashback scene where we see how the prehistoric DCEU fought off Steppenwolf. I loved, that was the best Green Lantern appearance ever. And that bothers me a little bit. It's not the Justice League in my mind, unless you can have Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, but you always have to have a Flash and you have to have a Green Lantern. I could go either way in the Cyborg Martian Manhunter swap, but you need a Green Lantern to feel like the Justice League. And I'm glad we at least had the cameo in the flashback, but let's get GL in for the next film, huh? Also, they were all a little too free and easy with the secret identities for my taste. All right, are you Aquaman? Bruce Wayne. Oh, I'm also Batman. Everyone hear that? Nordic Village, I'm Batman. Superman's back from the dead. Clark! Clark! There's those police officers were right there. I was like, Clark? Oh, he's Clark Kent, the dead reporter? Oh, okay, yeah. I'll tell everyone now. Come on. It's okay to call him Kal-El. It's okay to call him Superman. Don't call him Clark when there are other people around. I did like the mid-credit sequence where we have the comic moment of Flash versus Superman. How awesome was that? Simply from a comic book fan's perspective, that was awesome. And the end credit sequence, okay, I've made it clear I've not been a fan of Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, but it felt a little more tonally right there. That said, I'm so used to the black-haired Deathstroke on Arrow that see him with the white hair and beard kind of threw me off for a moment. I'm like, you don't need to do that. We're used to Deathstroke now with normal colored hair, but still, visually, the armor, that was cool. So in Justice League for the second film, it should be Darkseid. But yeah, in Justice League, I'm up for that. The fight scenes in the film were excellent. Sometimes the humor worked, sometimes it didn't. The two male leads were a bit boring. The Flash was miswritten, but otherwise, Justice League works as a bunch of people team up to fight a bad guy action film, and that's all we can ask from it. So I'm probably not going to get a DVD release. I might watch it again someday, but I don't really feel a need to run back to the theater and see it again. Justice League, good, not great. That's it for now. I'll see you back here in a few weeks. Oh man, we've been doing a lot of these lately. For Star Wars Last Jedi. Until then, this is Comic Book Issues, and I'm your host, the Last Angry Geek.